afternoon, and a very warm welcome to all of you on this somewhat comatose Sunday afternoon post food festival. I hope you've all eaten well. Yes, no? Yeah. But I'm pretty sure that we're all going to be riveted and awake during the session. Dilnawaz, our speaker, has had a few incidents where she's actually had to do a repeat of her sessions because the place has been overfilled and oversubscribed. So as Lucknow Walas, I think we're very fortunate to have her here with us. And we're not sort of elbowing other people out of the way for space and a seat. Each year, we gather to celebrate the written word in its many forms, to converse, to debate, and to revel in the sheer joy of ideas and unforgettable keynotes. This year, too, that dream is we are gathered here today, but in this absolutely extraordinary venue. This is a first for us. We've had a different venue for our literary Guftagu sessions up till now. We feel so very honored actually to be housed here for these few days, to breathe in this air, surrounded by centuries of thought, poetry, wisdom, and books that carry histories as vast as 1687. Can you believe it? That's the oldest book that's not we, I wish it to have in the library, is a Turkish chronicle from 1687. And there's also a copy of the Ramayana in Urdu, only in Lucknow, as we say.
Telling you a bit more about the library before we introduce the session and the panelists we have today. This beautiful library is nestled in the Kaisarbagh complex, and it's called the Amaruddaula Public Library, which is a deeply fitting venue for our literary segment this year, and we're extremely grateful to them for having opened their doors for us in this humongous, beautiful, historical place. The library holds over thousands and thousands of books and some rare manuscripts, as Parveen Appa mentioned earlier, and it's clearly like an evocative setting for this lecture and all the lectures that we've hosted this year. Today, the panel that we're hosting, the lecture that we're hosting is called City as Impression, Art, Archive and Lucknow, which is a lecture by Dilnawaz Mehta on her extensive collection of lithographs from Lucknow.
Dilnawaz Mehta is an art historian, a cultural researcher, and founder of Rare Finds Hindustan Revisited. Her work engages deeply with material, culture, and visual archives, tracing how cities like Lucknow have been represented across centuries through art and print. Combining scholarly research with a collector's intuition, Dilnawaz approaches the archive not as a static repository but as a living, responsive space, one that continues to reveal new meanings over time. We welcome you, ma'am, to the literary session. Over to you. All the best.
Good evening, and I'm so very happy to be here in this lovely, beautiful setting. I just want to tell you that when we talk about art and archives, and we talk about today's lecture, it's going to cover a huge period. It's a vast period from about 1770 to about 1925. So it's like we're covering centuries in a few minutes. And I've intentionally kept it simple, kept it easy to understand. I've largely done away with a lot of art terms because I understand for a lot of you, it is your passion for your own city which brings you here. And I've tried to make it a veritable feast for your eyes after a feast for your stomach. So we're going to see views of now, starting from a very early period. And while we're looking at it, now we talk about imprints, we talk about cities, we talk about spaces. And when we talk about imprints, an imprint is, we would define the term as something which creates an impression, a strong feeling, which people want to translate into something that they have experienced or seen. It's a visual documentation. And when you look at this period, this early period, for a lot of the youngsters, and I see a lot of young faces here, you have to realize that this is before even the advent of the camera. Of course, photography, the early period, is very, very different. But this predates the camera. So when you look at some of the views that you see, we're essentially going to look at paintings and drawings and prints. Click a picture and share it with your friends. It's the world of Insta right now. But we're going back in time. We're going to the 1700s. And we're going to look at some paintings and drawings from that period, and of course, prints. And if you look at this lovely view, it's called the Runi Darwaza. And I've intentionally used spellings and terms the way they were written in that period. It sort of gives you a feel of the space and the period in which it was written. And what if I were to tell you that this kind of painting would not have been initially done in a city like Lucknow? I'm sure some of you would feel, oh, Lucknow is a city which is known for its art culture. The Nawabs were great patrons of artists, whether they were Europeans or whether they were Indians. So why in the world would we not have paintings and drawings like this? And hence we just need to go back in time and see what happens. Now, Lucknow is a city of importance in the artistic sphere, starts with the advent of the Nawabs. Okay? Now, this is just something very interesting that I wanted to show you. It's a print which shows the pedigree or the family tree of the Nawabs. It's just a curious thing, but for today's lecture, I would like to focus on what happens, what are the changes which are brought about, and what is the situation, or what are the instances which lead to this profusion of the prints and what you're going to see today. Okay? Now, when we look at art and archives, you think of pictures like this. Now, these are views of Lucknow, multiple views of Lucknow. But what is it that brings about a change in the kind of art which is being drawn, the kind of art concepts which are being used, and what is it that leads to a large number of prints of Lucknow being produced and a lot of Lucknowi artists working in your city? Now, interestingly, it is the arrival of the Europeans and the British who bring about this change. Now, naturally, people who come from a particular place, a geographical location, they bring their culture, they bring their art concepts, they bring their social customs, which is exactly what happened. The Britishers and the Europeans who either came to India for work, they came for travel, some were merchant adventurers, some were soldiers, some were people who were employed by the East India companies. It's interesting to note we had multiple East India companies. You just didn't have the British East India Company. So all these people came with their customs, they came with their social understanding, and one of the important points of the customs and the social understanding was the usage of art for documentation. It was a necessary skill, and consequently, like singing and music, it was an indicator of social position. So there were a lot of people who were very much inclined to practice what was called the graces, and you had amateur artists, and of course you had the professional artist. So all these people came with their cultural attitude, and hence you have a lot of artwork being produced, and you have the Britishers and the Europeans who become harbingers of this different kind of art forms being brought, the different kind of art forms being practiced. Right? Now, what you see on the screen are basically manifestations of this new art form and the practice of the European art concepts. And hence you get this different kind of art forms. Shall I wait? Good. Okay, better? All right. So, when I spoke about this kind of work not being practiced in the initial period, you had the various different art forms, which is again a topic by itself and not meant for today's subject. But what you get to see are these multiple kind of images. Now, what you see is the main street of Lucknow.
year. Now, views which showed topographical spaces, like a city scene. Now, this is the Hosnabad Imambara. Of course, a view of Lucknow, and a procession, the British Army moving in with elephants. And here is the residency of Lucknow, drawn in 1860, but it's very important because it shows the residency before destruction. So it was this need and this intention behind the visitors, the travelers, the people who passed through, lived or worked in Lucknow, which was basically the importance which was attached to drawing and painting, the need to create visual documentation and share it with others, which in today's times gives us the views, the very artistic views of Lucknow, which are again the archives of our city. Okay? So this is just to give you a little introduction to what we're going to be looking at. And it's said that every painting, every picture talks. So today we're going to look at it. It's going to be a very brief little introduction, but it's going to be an introduction of teaching you how to listen to what a painting is trying to say. Okay? There's so much that you can talk about each of the paintings that you're going to see, but for want of time, we'll just begin the journey, listening to what a painting is trying to convey. Now, when you look at Lucknow, the city of Lucknow and its Nawabs were associated with this new kind of painting very much early on compared to the rest of India. And why was it so? Because you have a lot of Europeans, you have merchant travelers, you have traders, you have the company servants, whether they were in the military, which is the army, or whether they were employed by the Nawab. They all lived, worked, or passed through Lucknow. And they were very good patrons of art. The Nawab himself, this one shows Sujauddaulah, was a very good patron of art and artist. And in the year 1772, he invites Tilly Kettle, who is a professional portrait painter. He has come in from Europe, specifically England, and is in Calcutta. The Nawab hears of his arrival, and of course, when you have the Europeans and you're trying to interact with them and have employed them, there are lots of Europeans working for him, and of course, you have the residents and all, being around. So you're trying to imbibe the art techniques. You're trying to imbibe the social graces, as they were called, of the Europeans and the Britishers. So the Nawab hears of his fame and invites him to Faizabad to create some paintings for her. Unfortunately, most of the paintings that were drawn were destroyed and they're lost to the ravages of time. But what we see on the screen, this one, actually was done by an Indian painter in the Nawab's court. And the reason why I've chosen this is because you get to see, and when we talk about the Europeans, and I touched upon the Europeans and the Britishers and the painters and all influencing the Indian artist, and which led to the creation of the kind of art forms which form an archive for us of Lucknow, its city, its people, its history. This is to show what was happening in that period. And then again, it's a record of what you see. It's a typical portrait where you have the Nawab. This is the Nawab, his eldest son, and his 10 sons. And when you look at this painting, what you get to see is a European here who happens to be the artist, Tilly Kettle, and you have an Indian artist who is actually capturing the scene, because you have a lot of Indian artists who are being exposed to the European artists and the British artists coming in, imbibing their art techniques. Because remember, the Indian artists were schooled in different art forms. And here you have a different art form being practiced. And here it's a very interesting picture, because here you have the artist sitting on an easel and drawing this painting, which is the original painting which is destroyed. And you also get to see what their costume was. Look at the Nawab's costume, and I'm sure being in Lucknow, you've all seen these kind of costumes. But look at the European costume of the period. He wears an unpowdered wig, he's wearing spectacles, he's drawing. And for a lot of Indian artists, paints and pigments of this type were very, very unusual, because they painted in gouache, they painted with different materials. And for the first time, you'd be surprised to know watercolors came in much later. So when they're looking at them and they're drawing these pictures, there's some very important facets that they incorporate in the painting. And there's something that I do wish to point out. Look at the background. It's very plain. And look at the background because of the Indian artist, when he has his Indian training to finally record all that he sees. Look at the fine work, the pillars, the mats, the chatais in the background. And this is the kind of detailed work that they used to practice. Now, this leads us to another painting by an artist called Mihir Chand. Now, unfortunately, from this early period, a lot of the works are lost. A lot of the works have not been preserved because many of them were practiced, because you have the artists looking at the Europeans and the Britishers at their art and practicing. However, what was so interesting and so nice to note is that they used to use it in an artistic manner. It was never just a copy paste. It was never just to sort of copy the whole painting as such. And these are two paintings which I want to show you side by side, because this was a painting made by Tilly Kettle. Now, this was made in Faizabad in 1772, and it was commissioned by, of course, the Nawab, who you see here, over here, and this is Robert Baker. Baker was present in Faizabad with the Nawab because he was hammering out a treaty or hammering out conditions for the Nawab's relationship with the Rohillas. So this is in 1772. Now you have an artist called Mihir Chand, and this is the painting which he has made. Now look at what he has done. He has copied the Nawab, but he has put it within an Indian context. Whereas this, when you look at portraiture, portraiture was initially even used to document events, to make historical statements. Now, of course, this was a historical event. Mihir Chand doesn't use it so. He uses it as the Nawab being the main subject. He's drawn two attendants in the background and a little howdah here. And he's drawn it in his typical style because he drew his hereditary artistic roots from the Mughal school of painting. But what I do like about this painting is, can you see the hand which is raised here? He's drawn it in the same manner as here. This may not be very clear. And why is it so? Because, when you are coming to an understanding, your friends, they both gripping hands. So it shows an alignment of thought, an alignment of understanding. And he has actually drawn, if it were in today's times, I'd say, he's done a copy and paste, but of course he's added a bow, an arrow. So it's virtually like he's photoshopped this figure and transported it within his own artistic and aesthetic concepts. Which is very interesting, apart from the fact that you get a likeliness of the Nawab. And this is the first time, when you're looking at Indian paintings, especially Mughal paintings, from where a lot of these artists draw their hereditary lineage and painting concepts, most of the paintings normally were in profile. So here you have, when they're drawing 3/4 and you're drawing a full face or a frontal face, as it's called. So these are very different art concepts which are occurring. At the same time, these are archives of your city and the rulers. So it's a very interesting period. Now, another one, the Imambara of Lucknow. It's a very, very beautiful painting. If you actually look at the original, the colors are bold, bright. The color palette is totally different. And this was drawn by an artist called Sevak Ram, and this year is 1807. And what is so interesting is, when you look, it captures that period. It captures the time when, the Imambara is, of course, one of the main features, but look at the detail with which he's drawn it. You can see the taziyas here. Here you have the person praying, and these were the lanterns. And when we talk about the Calcutta and Lucknow relationship, interestingly, a lot of these lanterns in the early period had mica colors and mica drawings. Mica, of course, came largely from Patna, and close to Bengal. So a lot of these things, in the later times, you just have drawings with mica. So there's a lot that you can see in this picture, apart from the fact that it's a beautiful picture from an early period of your city. And interestingly, the same artist, he was a Murshidabad painter. You have, in the early period, you have a lot of painters who are associated with a particular geographical area. And after a while, they start migrating. And in the later period, he moves to Patna. And Patna is where he goes because that's where you have the Britishers and the Europeans. There's a lot of business happening over there with the East India companies and the travelers and the merchant traders. And that is where they get ready concepts. So you even see artists who are moving from one place to another. The other one which I showed you of Mihir Chand was actually a Lucknowi painter. But a lot of them moved from places, one place to another in search of patronage. And fortunately, the Nawabs were good patrons of art. Within this beautiful happening period where you have so much art being produced, art evolving, changing, you have the European artists who come, and we saw Tilly Kettle. Now this is another one. He's a very interesting artist. His name was Johann Zoffany. He comes to Calcutta in 1783, and when he arrives in India, he's already 50 years old, which is like ancient in that period, right? People hardly lived that long. And he was a very famous artist. He was a very popular artist back in Europe, but it is patronage which brings him to India. And once he comes to India, of course, he travels to different places, and he also happens to come to the Nawab's court. And this is where he draws two very wonderful paintings, which I love, and which show your Lucknow history. They show the social conditions. And of course, being portraits, they get down to depicting people. Now, when you look at this, the first thing that strikes you is there's so much animation. There's so much happening. It's not a stiff portrait. It's not that the person is just posing or standing upright or looking into the camera, as it were. There's so much happening. And what is happening? And this was a cockfight. This is Colonel Mordaunt, who was the head of the Nawab. This is Asufuddaullah's bodyguard. He was the head of his bodyguard. And this is a cockfight, which were like the nature of levees, events. Sanat Kada. So this is what was happening in that period. And what you get to see is while you have all this action, he captures exactly what Lucknow society is, and he draws very, very faithfully, because he's such a skilled painter, the people who matter, the notable people of the city. And so here you have the Nawab and Colonel Mordaunt talking. This, of course, is the cockfight. You have the two trainers looking at them with great anticipation as to who's going to win. Here are the other members. In the background over here, you see the dancing girls and the singers who are waiting. Like, you've watched IPLs now. I think a lot of things just get carried forward from the past. So these are your IPL cheerleaders waiting when the cocks are tired or a decision has been reached before the next pair starts fighting it out again. They're waiting to sing and dance and, play the music to keep the spectators engaged. Then again, you see little groups which are clubbed so. You have the group of Europeans who, of course, are gossiping away. That was a favorite pastime, apart from drinking, horse racing. And in Lucknow, it was cockfighting. And here is the artist. Can you see him on the chair? I think it's not very clear here. And he's sort of looking back at the viewer and looking on to the activities. So it's like his comment that I am looking at what Lucknow is. I'm looking at what is happening in Lucknow, and I'm sharing it with you. And next to him is Ozias Humphreys, again, a prominent person. So again, there's so much action, which was totally unlike portrait paintings, and especially Indian portraits which were being painted. At the same time, you can look at all the likeliness, you can look at all the faces, and you can virtually identify most of the people. So that was his skill as an artist. And this is what he captured for the city, the notables, the people, and the activities. Another one drawn by him, oh, it's not very clear. Can you change the focus? It's a very nice picture, but I don't know what's happening over here. I think, sorry? Anyway. Yeah, it's actually a painting. Anyway, unfortunately, it's not clear. I don't know what's happened. But anyway, I'll talk to you about it. Now, this is a painting, again, drawn by the same artist, Johann Zoffany. And this is drawn in Lucknow. And this was drawn by him in the year 1786 to 1787. And here you have Claude Anton Pollier. This is his friend Claude Martin, and this is John Wombwell. And they're all seated. This is a table here, and you have Anton Pollier, who's dressed in a fur cap, however, typically Lucknowi. And you know what is interesting about this period? You have all the merchants and the Europeans. You know, in this initial period is what I call the romantic period, when they all assimilated the Indian habits. They smoked a hookah, they kept an Indian wife or a mistress who was called the bibi. They wore Indian clothes, and for want of time, I'm not showing you a lot of other early paintings, but you can see them dressed in the typical Persian costume. And they wore it very comfortably and very happily. And here you have him pointing out, this is a basket with fruits and vegetables. So here is the Mali, and here is his cook. And he's pointing out to the cook which vegetables and fruits have to be used for the day's meal. Now, for those of you who are familiar with social customs and traditions, this practice went into well into the 20th century, where the owner, of course in this case there's no mistress of the house, would instruct the cook what to cook from the fresh produce of the day. And over here is a bunch of plantain leaves, banana leaves. Now, this is a table, and resting his hand against the table is Claude Martin. And Claude Martin is pointing to a painting. Can you see this? His servant is holding up a painting, which is probably drawn by him. And when I say that paintings, pictures, talk, we have to understand. We're attempting to understand what they're trying to tell us. What are they talking about? And this painting beautifully illustrates this, because here you have Claude Martin. Claude Martin was very interested in drawing and painting. He holds two brushes in his hand over here, not clear at all in this picture, and he's pointing out this painting, which he has probably drawn. It is his house. Can you see this? This is the river bank, and this is a house on a piece of land drawn by him. This is his house on the Gumti, and showing John Wombwell, his friend, this is what I have done, this is my house. So it's telling you, this is what I am, this is what I have built, this is what I enjoy, this is my hobby, and this is what I practice. And then again, you have John Wombwell, who's sitting on a chair, and he has two books on his hand. He was a very literary person, and he did a lot of research and study into the literature. He was an inverted book collector. And there you have all these people sitting. Over here you have two manuscripts and a book of prints. And we'll talk about why prints are so important for us, even as archives and art. And they're all sitting here. So it shows what life was. These are eminent people of the city of Lucknow, what they used to do, what were their interests, and at the same time you have very good likelinesses of what they were and what they did. Now this is the artist, Zoffany, who was probably staying in Pollier's house, and he's drawing. And what is so interesting about this picture is he's drawing this painting. It's a canvas on an easel, and he's drawing two ascetics under a tree. At the same time, these are landscapes. Now imagine, you're drawing a portrait. You're drawing a portrait which is so unusual, drawing a portrait with three people and Indian members of the household. You're drawing landscapes within this portrait. And look at the way he's created this, composed this picture. These are landscapes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and of course there's another one. Now this shows a sati. This shows elephants bathing in a river, and there's a small temple on a hill. This one is, 1 minute. These are pilgrims. This one is pilgrims bathing on a river ghat. This is a dying man on the Ganges, and this one shows a scuffle between Mughal soldier and redcoats, sorry. So he's commenting, and he's not within that portrait. He's giving you typical scenes of what life was in India, what was happening in India. So look at his artistic skill and look at his composition. There's so much that he talks about and so much that he conveys through a single picture. Okay, now, what we looked at were some paintings from this early period. Now, paintings are generally created by a single patron, specifically for the patron. And now we're going to look at prints. So what were essentially prints? When we go back in time, now imagine there's no camera, there's nothing where you can click and draw a picture, right? So when people came, let's say somebody came to Lucknow, sees this, Lucknow, this shows the bazaar over a bridge. Now these kind of images were very often very, very unusual for them. This was something which was quirky, something which was very interesting, and something when you came and saw, you would want to share with the others. So, in the absence of any other means by which you could share, necessity is the mother of all invention. So what happened was you created techniques which were called the printmaking techniques. And what used to happen is when somebody saw a picture, or they saw a drawing, or they saw a scene, or maybe they saw some very unique plants, and realized India was a place where there was so much to see. There were so many unusual things that you had never seen back in Europe, things that had not been heard back in Europe. There's a lack of communication, there's a lack of material. And remember, a lot of people are not educated. They don't read and write. So a picture can say something much more effectively than reading 1,000 words. So views like these were drawn, sketched, painted, and then created using the printmaking technique so that many copies of the same image could be made. Now, very often these were used, sold, or they were distributed amongst friends or people you knew, or sent back to England and Europe for people to see. There were various uses. And they were made using very artistic means. They were very, very beautiful to look at, and they were created in the same manner you would create a painting or a drawing, because they use the same art concepts. However, prints were made on a variety of subjects. Like somebody who came to, now you look at this. This shows outside the club in Lucknow. So it was made on the lifestyle. What was happening here, you can see them reclining on the easy chairs, as we call them. They're on a table, they're sitting outside, relaxing. Here you have monuments which are connected to the city. So everything was documented in this manner. And because prints were created on these subjects, they were made artistically. The only drawback, as it were, is because of the techniques which were used, many could not be created. So they were only produced in a limited number, and hence they become, even for us today, they become rare. You do not get them, you do not get to see them, and they become what some people would call limited edition pictures. But in a true sense, the limited edition is not something that you've restricted, self-restricted. It is actually so because, remember, they're made on paper. So paper deteriorates, it's organic. Having said that, all these were very beautiful. And for us, it is what they show and what they document which becomes archives and becomes art for us in today's times. So prints were very detailed, they were very, very vividly drawn, and they document and archive a city of Lucknow for us. So the others that we're going to see now would be some of the prints which were made in these overlapping periods and even later. Now, it was the very first picture that we started with, and it was often the army man or the person associated with the companies or the merchant or the adventurer or the trader who came and he drew these sketches. So they virtually sketched what they wanted, they drew what they wanted, and shared what they wanted. And hence it is very important for us now. And you have, this is drawn by an artist called John Leward. And who was he? Now he happened to be associated with the military, the army, the British East India Company. And he worked and he came to India from the year 1822. Okay? And in the year 1822, of course, he passed through Lucknow, and this is the view he saw. Very often, when people came, they passed through, they saw things, they also wrote descriptions to accompany the view. And these descriptions are very interesting to go through. And very often, these descriptions give us a wealth of information. Now, he says, when he drew this picture, now what you see basically is this beautiful, grand, imposing monument, and surrounded by little huts, small, hovels as it was called, and you have an elephant with a howdah passing through the gateway. And he mentions that it is a city, Lucknow is a city of grand mansions, beautiful splendor, but poverty, finery, and filth. And this is in the year that early. And he says it's beautiful. The splendid gateway is excellent. And it's called Rumi Darwaza. Do any of you know why? No. Because Rumi in that period was associated with anything which came from Turkey, Asia, Greece. And this is supposed to have been modeled on a gateway which existed in Constantinople. So that's why you have the name Rumi Darwaza. Now, he drew another one, which is, he's titled Near Lucknow, so it's probably on the outskirts. And he mentions that camels were very, very frequently seen in this city. I wonder how many of you see camels now? No? No. So he's preserving a part of Lucknow history which is essentially lost now. And he interestingly also comments that the Nawab had to use force to collect taxes and revenue from the city. It's reading all this and interacting is so very interesting. And he also talks about the palm plant. Now, palm plants, when we talk about cities like Bombay, and some of the earliest views of Bombay and even Madras show a lot of palm plants. I still see it in Bombay and Madras, but I have been going around the city and I don't see palm plants either. So there, prints preserve a country or a city which is much changed and much altered for us. Now, you have a pair of artists called Thomas and William Daniel. For those of you who are interested in art or history may have heard of them. Now, they were an uncle and nephew team. A lot of people feel mistakenly that they are father and son. They were an uncle and nephew team. They traveled to India because they were professional artists. They were looking at means to generate revenue. Artists, of course, were not very well paid. Work back in England and Europe was very, very difficult to come by. And India was what was called picturesque. So they come to India, and you have a lot of artists coming to India to create their careers and in search of patronage. So they came to India. They stayed in India for close to 9 years. They went all over India the way as you would know it. They went all the way up to Kashmir. They went up down south to Kanyakumari. They went to Calcutta. They came to Bombay, and they drew these wonderful views. These artists were very, very faithful to the factual depiction. Now, as an artist, you tend to take artistic liberties, sometimes creating light effects, sometimes create foreshortening a monument, sometimes elevating a monument further so that you get those kind of effects in a painting, which is pleasing to the eye. But they were very, very true to the concept and factual depiction. And what you see over here is one of the earliest views, which shows Lucknow This is the city of Lucknow, taken on the opposite bank of the Gumti. And they drew some very, very beautiful old Lucknow views. And what you see over here, this is the palace over here. And do you all know why this river is called Gumti? You're all from Lucknow. Because it goes, and there's a documentation which says the river gets its name because the distance which it travels from Banaras to Lucknow, it is such a circuitous view which goes round and round and round that it's called Gumti, and it takes far longer to travel by river. Traveling by river was also a very important way in which people moved from cities and towns than if you traveled by road, and hence you get the name Gumti. Yes, but this is like documented, and that's how they give the name. Of course, being history, you have various interpretations. Yes. I'll talk about this in detail again. So, this is another view, and this is the Panch Mahala. And what we need to notice is, this monument has been very, very factually depicted. Look at this. You see the small verandas, and you get to know that it's not a railing within the wall, but they're actually protruding out. You get to see every arch. Can you see this? Every arch is finely detailed. It's not a rough drawing or just a little arch like this, like a V. They have been so factual and so very detailed that they've drawn the arches as they existed. Plus, their proportions were very, very true to the exact dimensions of any building or monument they drew. So they have actually preserved a Lucknow with its buildings and monuments in exact proportion as they existed for us to see even today. And they're very, very important artists. Another view which they drew of Lucknow, this was the boat which belonged to the Nawab, and it was called the Morpankhi. And I guess everyone can guess why it was called a Morpankhi, because you see a peacock head here, right? Can you see this? This is the head of a peacock here, and it was a very long, elongated boat. It was used by the Nawab, and this was a small pavilion here. This boat was supposed to be very swift, and it could really move very fast. And in this pavilion, you would frequently have dancers, and this is where the Nawab used to entertain his guests. And it had between 20 to 40 rows, and we also get to know that they had elliptical oars. Now, how finely detailed, and how, I just wonder how much effort that they put in to actually observe and record all this, so that in today's times we get to know what used to happen then. And imagine this is just for a drawing, it's just for a painting. And here you have the elephants, at the riverside. Here you have people moving, going up the slope. This is, of course, the palace. And here you get an idea about the different boats as well. That's a parasol, that's a pelican. And there's so much that they've managed to draw within one picture. And there's so much that you can talk about also. Now, another way in which the paintings, the prints, and the drawings preserve a city for us is they even document the social and cultural views and events that used to happen. Now, this shows the the Marquis of Wellesley at the Nawab's breakfast. Now, this is again on the Gumti. It is on an open balcony or veranda. Here is the breakfast table. Can you see it? And this is a river. I mean, my slides give a very nice, vivid blue, but somehow it's falling short over here. And this is the elephant fight. Now, Lucknow was well known for the elephant fights. And here, the elephant fight is on the opposite bank of the Gumti. Right? And their levees, or, these breakfast meetings were very popular. And the Nawab would invite all the Britishers and the Europeans to these early morning feasts. And everybody would sit together, enjoy entertainment. Sometimes it was elephant fighting, sometimes it was another animal. And it's so interesting to note they had all kinds of cuisine being served, whether different meats being served, and it was like a gathering. And this was drawn in the year 1813 and drawn by a very important person in British Indian history who was Charles D'Oyly. And D'Oyly is what we would call a generation of East India Company employees. His father had come to India. He was born in Calcutta. He goes back to England, of course, studies, comes back to work. He's an opium agent. Opium was not outlawed at that point. That's where most of the revenues came from. But he's so important to us from the artistic point of view because he is a very great patron of artists and arts. And he also initiates what we know now as the Bihar Amateur Lithographic Press. And there's so much that you can talk about him. And this drawing of Lucknow, is so important coming from a person like him. Then we come to the year 1857, which was a very significant year in the history of Lucknow. And of course, as a lot of you may know, it was the year the Indian independence struggle started, or what we call the rebellion started, or the mutiny, or various names depending on the perspective. But Lucknow was the main center. It was where you have the heroic stories, you have the resistance, you have legendary heroic battles, and you have this period. There's an entire period. It's not just a period of 1 year. It goes on for nearly 2 years, and even up to 1860. And this is drawn by an artist called Dodson. Now, Dodson was working for the Bengal infantry, of course, employed by the East India Company, and he comes to Lucknow to what is called free the residency, right? And when he comes to Lucknow, he sees these beautiful monuments, and he draws not just the monuments, but also the army as it's on the march. He draws all the beautiful monuments, the destruction, the various events that take place, and the campaigns which were needed to gain control. And he virtually documents the relief of Lucknow. He documents all the events in and surrounding Lucknow, and he leaves behind for us some of the most beautiful views of your city. What is interesting is, imagine the kind of turmoil the city is going through. Imagine the kind of activities that are happening on a day-to-day basis. Imagine people are dying, people are strapped for food, you don't know whether you're going to survive the next day. And in the middle of all this, he draws these sketches and views on the spot. So we have some very factual images which show the glory and the destruction of Lucknow. And of course, they are some of the most authentic and textually factual views that we have. And his work was, of course, very comprehensive, very detailed. And, when you go about Lucknow, you see so many views of the residency. And that's the reason I've just chosen this. This is the residency, and that's the banqueting hall. The rest, things don't happen all of a sudden. The Britishers also knew that there was discontent and there were issues fermenting for a long time. So that was as early as 1856. And once Awadh was annexed by Lord Dalhousie, and Wajid Ali was deposed and exiled to Calcutta, the minute the Commissioner Lawrence, he got to know of what was happening, because largely you have the Bengal army which rebels. That's how it starts off. So the Britishers immediately took up defensive quarters in the residency. And this is the residency, which was drawn by Dodson. And by this time, you can see because they came for the relief of Lucknow, you can see that it has been shelled, it has been battered. and it's in a very, very poor state. So is the banqueting hall. And of course, at a later point, this gets blown off. And but essentially, this is what he drew. And the banqueting hall, for all those who are not aware, was largely used as a hospital. And I'll show you another view. Now, this was the battery, which was on the Kanpur road. It was called the Kanpur Battery. That's where it gets its name from. And this bungalow was this here. It's a totally battered bungalow. Imagine what has been going on for days together. This was called Anderson's bungalow. And then, of course, you have Chattar Manzil and Farhad Bakhsh palaces in the background. So even when there's so much that he's drawing, it's basically battle, it's basically survival, he still draws the Lucknow monuments, which I find fascinating. Another one, this is the Dilkusha and the Constant. La Martiniere. This is the Dilkusha. And it was at the Dilkusha, which was built by Sadat Ali Khan, that it had a large park and that's where he had the game. And it was the venue of so many social occasions. And of course, a lot of you may know about the La Martiniere or Constantia, as it was called. And there's something very interesting I would like to share with you. When Claude Martin, he was an Italian, he passed away. Of course, he endowed the trust with a lot of money to start a boys' orphanage in Calcutta. And of course, start a school over here. In the mutiny, during the mutiny, his body, he had already passed away by then, his body was interred in the basement. Simply, as a precaution, because the British thought, and note how smart they are, they're so conversant with the Indian customs, they thought that they would not, even if they lost this building, because remember, they're fighting to retain buildings, structures, territory, areas, and they interned his body in the basement, thinking that no Nawab, no Indian would like to occupy a building which has been used as a tomb. So look at the extent of strategizing that they're doing. And all this is simply because they're so familiar with the customs and traditions and thinking. Anyway, Dodson as an artist, he was fascinated by the city during the time he stayed here. And he drew some very, very beautiful views of the city, like this one. I think this is one of my favorite views because it shows the river view of buildings. And, okay, this is the Qadam Rasool. And the Qadam Rasool, which is called the Prophet's footprint, and it was, of course, a Mohammedan place of worship, and it said it was built by Ghazuddin Haidar, and it contained the footprints of the Prophet, which was bought by a pilgrim, we don't know who the pilgrim was, from Arabia, and this relic was lost during the rebellion. Okay. Next is the Shah Najif, then you have the Shah Najif, you have the Moti Mahal, and this is the Chattar Manzil Palace. So he's virtually drawn a panorama of the city. And when you look at it, it's so nice and calm. You have the boatmen bringing out the boats. Even when you look at the river, when I talk about pictures talking, it's like, okay, everything is calm and calm. There's nothing happening. But there's so much fermenting beneath the surface. And he also drew some very pretty views of the city. Musa Bagh. This is Musa Bagh, this is the bridge from the end of Musa Bagh, and this is Moti Mahal. Now, can you see these here? These are the mud fortifications which the British undertook, and this was a bridge. Now, this was in 1858. This is the way he saw it. So you have, the bridge has been broken, the mud fortifications have been breached. So here you have a pretty picture with a historical event being documented and recorded. Now, it's not simply the British who were recording all this, but you also have Europeans. Now, Axel Lind Hageby was a soldier of Swedish origin, and he accompanied the British army on the various places that they were during the mutiny. And he recorded the Indian recordings, as to what was happening. And we know history is recorded by the warrior, the winner, and here you have a European recording it, and what is very interesting about this is he also draws the British Army on the march. Like here you have, you know how they used to bathe, and here is the battery on the march. So of course this is the sacking of Lucknow, this is Kaisarabagh, but the views like these were also important. And then, of course, when you have the mutiny, you have events like this. You know, these are defenders on the lookout. This is at the mutiny. And there you get, you know, it's like he's capturing what was happening. You have the cannonballs, you have the cannons poised. And this is on the lookout when they're waiting for the relief to come in or they're waiting for reinforcements to come in. And they record so much of happening history. And this later on went on to be the Redan Battery, and it was one of the strongholds in the Residency. And naturally, when you have so much happening on a historical level, events, you also have an interest in the people who used to rule earlier. The Nawab was deposed, and in Calcutta, which brings us to the theme of today's lecture, this year's theme for the Sanat Kata. But you also have drawings like these, and this is actually an engraving which show the Nawab and his queen. And you know, when engravings like these came out, they also wrote about what they used to wear. Like the artist tells us, the queen used to color her hands and feet with henna. They used to oil their hair with jasmine, and they used to use an epilator to clear stray hairs. So look at how refined they were and how bothered about culture and looks. And of course, once this tumulus period was over, you have other types of drawings being made. Of course, you have the standard drawings of the monuments, the cities being made, but you have drawings and prints like these, which show the dyers of Lucknow. And it is so interesting to note that different trades, different anthropological types, different caste and customs are being documented all over India. And in Lucknow also, we have some very, very interesting works like these which are being drawn of the city and their people and their trades. And this shows dyers of Lucknow, and we know that Lucknow city was known for its trade in indigo and the dyers who used to dye cloth in indigo. The cloth was very popular because it did not size and the colors were very, very brilliant. And you have native chintzes and you know, these kind of beautiful cotton stuffs and fabric. This slide, it's very interesting because you have the gold and silver smiths, you have lace makers, and you have a tailor. And all these people, they've documented them because you can imagine how important they were to the city of Lucknow. They're not famous people, but these are tradesmen. They're people who are living and working, and they have been drawn. And interestingly, all these people used to work from the main city, which was called the Great Bazaar. It was a narrow road which moved from one end of the city to the other, and the entrance of this Great Bazaar was occupied by the gold and silversmiths. And a lot of them were Kashmiris. Look at the migration of craftsmen and tradespeople also. And they were known for the very beautiful silver work. Then you have the lace makers. I was just wondering, do you have any lace makers now left? Because they go on to say that the lace makers were known all over India. They used to draw out gold and silver lace as thin wire. Some were round, some were either flat, and some were created in different shapes. And they were drawn to extreme thinness. They were used in other cities like Ahmedabad, Banaras, and in the manufacture of kincord brocades. The principal kinds of laces were called lachka, kalabatu, and lice. And of course, here you have the tailor, who is also found next to the lace makers. Right? Now, of course, with the turn of the century, you have a new trend, which are illustrated postcards. And visitors or residents of the city shared images of the city and, of course, the notable areas through post. There's different things coming up at different periods. And they sent it to people in different cities or back home in England. But what we noticed, these were available as readily available souvenirs. And for us right now, they're some of the most simplest. Artistically, they're very simple. But they're very historically relevant views. And of course, for a lot of you, they are instantly recognizable. Right? Now, another set of these postcards. Now, what we look at is the Bailey Guard Gate. Look at it. Look at the state of dissolution. It's overgrown with shrubbery and stuff. Of course, it's in a much better state now, but you see the neglect. And we end today's talk with this view which I have selected because I thought I'd be open, I hope I have been able to open a window to your city with this lecture. And this shows a window of the La Martiniere looking towards Lucknow. This is the city of Lucknow, and this is the La Martiniere window. So, thank you so much.
Amit, I have another supplementary. I was also wondering why the Survey of India, the Archaeological Survey of India, and all these diligent organizations that are drawing architectural drawings of monuments across the country happen to ignore most of Lucknow, most of Hyderabad, most of, monumental architecture of the late 17th century or 18th century entirely. Do you have structure, plans and elevations of Lucknow monuments, for instance?
Well, let's put it this way. I can't speak for somebody else as to what they have decided to do. But what I am aware of is there was a period where India went through a phase where you did not want to have anything to do with the colonial period. So there were a lot of times when things which could have been very interesting art, very interesting, important archives, have been destroyed, have been mutilated, have been put away, and and it's very difficult to trace them once they go missing. That's one. Two, anything to do with the colonial period was looked down upon, was did not want to be associated with. But there has been a resurgence of things where people, it gives them a sense of nostalgia, it gives them a feeling of reconnecting with the city or their own history or the family history. And I myself have a lot of exhibitions and things because when I started off, there were people saying, oh, what is this? I mean, and we have exhibitions and where I have everything written and documented. This is 1857, or this is 1902, and I've still had people coming and telling me, "Bahut acha banaya." I definitely don't look that ancient. And they've read it and they've gone through it. So I guess there's a lot of awareness which is needed. So that's the way it is. And I'm really thankful for an organization like Sanat Kadam, where they're sort of bringing all these things within the purview of the general people. There was so much that I could have spoken about each painting, but I thought, very often, and that's the feedback I get, this is the first time I'm looking at it, people who come and attend, and they're fascinated, and that's where the journey starts from. So I've kept it very simple, and I just wanted it to be a feast for your eyes, for your city, for the city you grow up, live in, work, or you come to and visiting. So I hope it's been a successful effort.
I have a quick question for anybody who's interested. Do you have a website where you've uploaded any images if any people want to go back and examine them with greater detail or reinterpret them like Sir has?
Yes, but the websites are not from with connection to this lecture, but I basically have two companies because we're into selling some prints and stuff. So they're Rare Finds and Hindustan Revisited. So yes, you would get to see some stuff, but definitely not the paintings and things because the website is essentially a glimpse into what we do professionally. As an art historian, I lecture at museums, at other universities, at other societies and organizations which deal with aesthetics and stuff. Even, thankfully, even colleges and institutes which are now realizing what we need to do, like the JJ School of Arts, a very famous and a very old institution, I've had students coming from there doing a postgraduate, because I teach at the postgraduate level, where I do a module on colonial art and paintings and portraiture and landscape painting and stuff. And they say, we've learned how to do it. We know the technical aspects of creating such an image. Like you see a typical village scene, maybe a cow, a thatched hut, you see a bullock cart, you see a wheel. They know how to paint it, but they don't know where it starts from. It starts from the colonial period with artists like Chinnery. So there's so much that we know, and yet so much that we don't know. We never go down to the roots.
Thank you very much. Please.
Thank you. Thank you.